This is the greatest Black Clover theory you will ever witness. It covers everything: the identity of Asta's father, Astaroth's true plan, the detailed manipulations of the timeline and how many times they have occurred. It explains why Asta has no magic, why Liebe possesses anti-magic, and why Lucius can't see Asta's future. It reveals what happened to Astaroth and why Asta and Liebe look like twins. And Julius' true identity, a reincarnation. Smash that like button, I want this theory to reach as many people as possible. The plot of Black Clover is generally acknowledged as being rather complex. Initially it appeared straightforward, with Asta dreaming of becoming the Wizard King. However, it soon introduced elements like elves, devils, and the like. A key revelation that completely altered the story's trajectory was about time. Timelines, time magic, time manipulation, time travel, and so forth. This seems to explain the mistake in Lucius' future predictions. The actual timeline doesn't match what Lucius perceives through Astaroth's time magic. But why is that? Whenever timelines play a role in a story, predicting the outcome becomes nearly impossible. This is what the butterfly effect implies. A small disturbance, like the flutter of a butterfly's wings, can eventually result in a tornado on the other side of the globe. To put it in real-life terms, if you had woken up a minute later yesterday, this minor change could have caused a ripple effect, altering your entire course for the day. You might not be watching this video right now, and I may not even have created this video today due to your actions thousands of miles away. This is the concept behind timeline manipulation. Nonetheless, despite the complexity, there are still conclusions we can draw from Black Clover using straightforward logic. Firstly, if Lucius has indeed stolen Astaroth's time magic, then Astaroth, just like Lucius currently, would have been capable of observing all the different timelines from the moment of his birth. Considering the lore of demonology, devils are believed to have been created around the same time as Earth. This belief stems from the notion that God created humans, commanded the angels to serve them, which resulted in a rebellion led by Lucifer in heaven, sparking a holy war. The rebellious angels who were defeated, known as fallen angels, were exiled and condemned to the underworld. You know, devils like Lilith, Nama, Astaroth, Lucifero, Beelzebub, Adramelech, and so on. Hence, it's possible to assume that Astaroth has been around since creation of humanity in Black Clover. This means that Astaroth knew about all events related to humanity from the very beginning and witnessed every possible timeline before humans even came into existence. We're talking about an expanse of time ranging from 10 to hundreds of thousands of years or more. Any entity possessing the power to look into the future will inevitably be driven by curiosity to glimpse what's far ahead. If Astaroth were to look 50,000 years into the future and find a world where all devils and humans have perished, with some strange individual establishing his own paradise, he will naturally reject this reality. The immediate reaction would be to explore his own destiny. As Astaroth, he will perceive himself as immortal, since devils don't die unless you kill them. So when he finds out that he is no longer alive, he will want to understand why. He is the strongest devil. Who could have defeated him? Definitely not this loser Lucifero. And when Astaroth sees that, for example, in 20,000 years, a person named Lucius will steal his magic and destroy the world, he will become aware of his own guilt for not preventing this catastrophe. Because for Astaroth, the future is already part of reality. He can change everything. He just needs to find a way. Astaroth doesn't necessarily have to play the hero and strive to save the world. However, a devil like him will not let Lucius have free reign. If it were truly impossible in any of the countless timelines for Astaroth to either prevent Lucius' birth or avoid his own demise at Lucius' hands, then Astaroth would at least attempt to defeat Lucius in some other way, indirectly. You might be wondering why Astaroth didn't just eliminate Lucius' ancestors. The truth is, we don't know what the consequences would have been. Only Astaroth knows that. There must be a reason he didn't eradicate any timeline that led to Lucius' birth. For instance, if Astaroth is Asta's father, then perhaps Astaroth fell in love with Lysita after seeing future timelines in which they loved each other and even had 2 children, Asta and Liebe. By eradicating the sequences of events that led to Lucius' birth throughout time, it might also mean that Lysita will cease to exist, and so as a result his own children will also be eradicated. For instance, it seems that Alan has a connection to Lysita. Perhaps Lysita is from a family in the Spade Kingdom, but she was forced to leave due to her disease. Living in the cold all by herself would have been tough, so she might have decided to move to the Clover Kingdom, far away from any other living person. The possibility that Lysita might have originally come from the Spade Kingdom is already a risky link to the Zogratis family. If Astaroth had altered such a significant part of history as the Zogratis family from the Spade Kingdom, it's reasonable to think it might have also erased the Asta clan, and with it Lysita, Asta's mother. As I mentioned, for Astaroth the future is already reality, so altering the timeline so his children will never be born is like killing them. When I state that Astaroth didn't see a single timeline in which Lucius failed to slay him, I am including timelines where due to Lucius' non-existence, a greater catastrophe occurred. It's possible that Lucius' existence in and of itself could avert something more disastrous. So Lucius' existence might have been essential at least for Astaroth. Astaroth had thousands of years to prepare the most complex plan imaginable, and Lucius will never uncover it because he lacks the ability to see into the past. This should be a fundamental component of time magic, so if it turns out that Rio's eye can view the past, it should be clear that it is Astaroth's eye. The only reason he might have relinquished it is to prevent Lucius from possessing it, thereby hindering him from discovering that Astaroth manipulated events in the past. His manipulation led Lucius to carry out actions that Astaroth had planned for him thousands of years before Lucius' birth. It's important that Lucius never finds out about this, otherwise the plan will not work. Okay, so that was the first thing we know. The second thing we know is that in the universe of Black Clover, 2 souls cannot inhabit one body unless there has been some form of external intervention. The way simple logic operates is that when we understand a phenomenon and the reason for its occurrence, we can use this knowledge to explain similar phenomena. For instance, we know that snowfall is associated with cold temperatures, because that's when rain transforms into snow. It never snows when it's warm, why would we even think about it? There's no need to re-examine the cause every time it snows. So why should we treat the concept of 2 souls in one body any differently? We already know this happens when a reincarnation spell is cast, as seen with Patri and William, Yuna and Lichtsan and all the other elves. Without knowledge of the reincarnation, Yuna for example will never understand why he has 2 souls, because the reincarnation took place when he was still unborn. So neither he nor Lichtsan have any memory of anything other than their existence as Yuno. Now let us consider Lucius and Julius. Just like Yuna and Lichtsan, they were born with 2 souls in one body. If they are a reincarnation, then they would not know it, but what is the reason for their unique existence? Why should we think it's due to some kind of birth defect? Why should we assume this when we have evidence that this occurs during reincarnations? The most logical conclusion would be that Julius' soul does not belong to the Zogratis family. He is not Lucius' twin brother. He doesn't even have black hair. His personality is entirely different from his siblings, despite having grown up with them for probably 20 years. All these signs point to a reincarnation. If Julius is indeed a reincarnation, we need to ask the who, when, and why. For the elf reincarnations, we have a clear understanding. We know they were reincarnated due to the massacre, the reincarnation spell, and Zagreus' entire scheme. Logically, if Julius is also a reincarnation but not an elf, then he must be someone who died and was brought back. Now, is it a mere coincidence that Julius was reincarnated into Lucius? But who would have a reason to reincarnate Julius into Lucius? And who is Julius? The only one who will do that is Astaroth. He's the only one with a reason. But who could Astaroth have reincarnated into Lucius, and for what reason? First, let's analyze Julius' magic to understand what he might be. As we know, reincarnations can utilize the magic they had in their previous lives. But here's the issue. Julius doesn't possess any magic. He is literally like Asta. Look, Lucius uses soul magic, which is his inherent magic ability. You know, because of the Zogratis magic. Body, bone, blood, soul. And Julius is nothing. The time magic that Lucius uses comes from Astaroth. This is not Julius' ability. The transformation spell comes from soul magic by altering the soul's shape, so that's not Julius' magic either. When Julius was still unaware of Lucius' existence, he claimed that he was born with time magic, which we now know to be false. How could he not have noticed that he has a real magic? This is only possible if he himself actually has no magic, just like Asta. Therefore, the fact that Julius didn't receive a grimoire and doesn't have a magic ability of his own proves that he doesn't possess any magic. He uses time magic much like Asta uses anti-magic. So based on this logic, whoever Julius was before Astaroth reincarnated him into Lucius didn't possess any magic, not in the sense of Liebe with anti-magic, but more like Asta without any magic at all. Hence, given that only a single individual in the world is known to be born without magic, with Julius being the second, it might be possible that the current timeline has two Astas. Asta and the future Asta, who will be reincarnated at some point to complete the timeline loop. Timeline loop what? Yeah, I know. More to that in a moment. Or perhaps Julius is Astaroth reincarnated, because Astaroth also lost his magic after Lucius stole it. At that time, Astaroth must have reincarnated himself into Lucius, creating Julius for the first time. This would have erased everything that happened up until the point when Lucius was born, this time with Julius. However, this wouldn't erase Astaroth's existence, because Julius only exists due to the fact that Astaroth decided to reincarnate himself into the past, into Julius within Lucius. Therefore, for Julius to exist, Astaroth must reincarnate himself again in the future to avoid creating a paradox where Julius couldn't exist because Astaroth didn't do what he did in the first loop to create Julius. This would then destroy time and existence, or reset the timeline to the moment when Lucius was born, but this time again without Julius, because Astaroth failed to close the time loop. Alternatively with Julius. So Astaroth will be stuck in this replay loop until he no longer creates a paradox. But why do I suggest that Asta might also be Julius reincarnated? The reason is that maybe even the reincarnation time loop with Astaroth as Julius wouldn't result in enough manipulation to defeat Lucius. Perhaps Astaroth was meant to do certain things in the few years after he was supposed to reincarnate himself back into the past to make Julius' existence not a paradox. In that case, this would only work if one of the timelines offered an alternative reincarnation in which Astaroth would be able to live longer and possibly die differently, in order to create the timeline that will surely lead to Lucius' defeat. For that to happen, he must find a replacement who will inherit the reincarnation curse, so to speak, to be reborn as Julius Novachrono instead of Astaroth. This person must be very close to Astaroth, so that the essence of Lucius isn't changed by Julius or the new Julius. Ideally, it would be Astaroth's son. This could be Asta, and Asta is very similar to Julius, so if Astaroth finds a replacement for his reincarnation loop, this could create a timeline where Asta could sacrifice himself in the future to be reincarnated in the past as Julius to close the time loop instead of Astaroth. And now remember the prophecy of Julius. He said that either the Clover Kingdom will be destroyed or Asta will die, or that both could happen. This prophecy remains one of the biggest mysteries in Black Clover. Currently, there's a war in the Clover Kingdom. Now imagine the reincarnation theory is true. In that case, it will mean one of two things. Either the kingdom will be destroyed because Asta did not reincarnate to close the loop, creating a paradox and extinguishing existence itself, or Asta will die. In this scenario, the kingdom is not destroyed, because Asta defeated Lucius and then died after sacrificing himself, to be reborn as Julius after discovering the truth about Astaroth and the time loop. And if both the kingdom is destroyed and Asta dies, that means Asta loses to Lucius, since Lucius will destroy the kingdom in that case. But how can Asta uncover the truth? Let's assume Ryu gives Asta his eye, which turns out to be the eye of Astaroth. Ryu asks Asta to see what message his father left behind many years ago. He looks back in time and sees his father Astaroth talking to his son, Asta, revealing that he manipulated everything. Thanks to Asta's strength, the world was saved. However, to avoid creating a paradox, he has to sacrifice himself. The sacrifice led to the existence of Julius Novachrono, which then triggered all the events that unfolded in the Clover Kingdom. This series of events ultimately made Asta strong enough to save the world. If Asta doesn't make the sacrifice, the existence of this timeline will simply disappear. Astaroth could have informed Asta about the whole reincarnation dilemma, which helped them to create a safe space where they can infinitely recreate timelines every time a paradox occurs because either Astaroth or Asta refused to reincarnate. He could tell him things like he didn't want to take away his choice, so if he decides that he doesn't want to die, then time will reset again. Basically, Astaroth wanted Asta to make the decision on his own. And so the story of Black Clover takes place in one of the many timelines Astaroth created, the most recent one. Have you ever wondered why only Asta and Julius have these strange, excited eyes? They are really the only characters who do that. Could it be because they are the same person? Or father and son? Both lack magic, both have a sense of justice, and both a desire to become the Wizard King. By the way, that way, Asta could become the Wizard King, and Yuno can become the Wizard King. Anyway, if Asta is Julius, and if the theory that Asta is also Liebe's real biological brother is true, you know, the whole double hybrid theory or split soul theory, then how does that make any sense? Remember when I mentioned why Astaroth chose Asta as the reincarnation sacrifice? This is because Astaroth must accomplish certain tasks after Lucius steals his magic, in order to set up all the necessary elements for the timeline in which Lucius is defeated. For example, he has to make sure that Liebe is thrown out of the underworld, that the Grimoire will be hidden in the Grimoire Tower, and many other things, which might prevent Astaroth from casting the reincarnation spell on himself. This is why he needs to find a replacement, ideally his son. But he doesn't have a son yet, so he meets the woman he fell in love with from the future timelines he saw many years ago. He can meet her now since he no longer has magic after Lucius stole it. He explains the situation to her and lets her know that life cannot continue unless they find a way to close the paradox. Either way, one of their children will die, but this way they at least give Asta the choice to save those he loves. Listed as the type of person who will agree immediately. And in case you are wondering how Astaroth could cast a spell after losing his magic, let me explain. Obviously, he must have cast that spell before losing his magic, which shouldn't be a problem with time magic. It's pretty clear that whatever happened in the dungeon wasn't the Neverland spell. Neverland removes time, while Astaroth stops time. The spell in the dungeon was a clear time magic spell that stopped all time except for Yuno, something Lucius did in the first fight against Asta. Clearly this was done by someone who knew the timeline and used the time magic spell specifically for Yuno to save Asta. So yes, Astaroth has the ability to set spells using time magic for a specific time and moment. Or consider the teleportation to the land of the sun, which could only have occurred without anyone casting the spell if someone had cast the spell in the past. This is only possible if that person knew exactly what will happen. Only Astaroth is capable of doing such a thing. And so Astaroth and Lysita had two children, Liebe, who was born in the underworld, and Asta, who was born in the human world. But why was Liebe born in the underworld? Now it gets exciting. Here's where my split soul theory comes into play. Asta and Liebe look like twins, that's undeniable. They share the same height, hair, body structure, everything is identical. Even their age. This was hinted at multiple times, for instance when Lycita told Liebe that he has a brother, roughly his size, implying they are around the same age. These hints suggest that they are siblings, possibly even twins. But here's the interesting part. Both were born without magic. But for some reason, one of them manifested anti-magic, while being able to be around Lycita, but the other didn't manifest anti-magic and couldn't be around Lycita. Lycita's explanation was that because Liebe has no magic and because he's a devil, he's immune. But shortly after, we discovered that she was indeed capable of using her disease to absorb Lucifero's life force. Therefore, the fact that Liebe is a devil has absolutely no relevance to why he's immune. And his lack of magic doesn't matter either, because Asta, although he didn't have any magic, was still affected. You may now wonder why we even have to assume there's something else about Liebe that makes him immune. Maybe it's just anti-magic. No, he only awakened anti-magic in the grimoire, much later after he met Lycita. The reason I think there's another explanation is because Tabata purposely let Lycita mention something else, besides Liebe simply not having any magic. But then shows something that disproves this idea just a few panels later. So what's this mysterious factor? If Asta and Liebe are not twins, but the same person with one representing the soul and the other the body, then all life force belongs to Asta. This is why despite not having magic, he was still affected by Lycita. The reason Zagreus' life force absorbing spell didn't work on Asta might really be just as Patri said, because of his anti-magic. Initially I thought the scene could have been a red herring and the truth was that Asta has no life force. But this always conflicted with the fact that Lycita still had to give Asta away. This could be because she wanted to protect him from Lucifero, knowing that Lucifero would come for Liebe. That's still definitely a valid point, but at the same time, Asta might have really been affected, and even if Lycita didn't know about Lucifero taking her life in a year, she would still have chosen to give Asta away. Liebe on the other hand doesn't have life force or magic, which makes him immune to Lycita's disease. Liebe is Asta's soul. As sons of Astaroth, they inherited a mix of a soul without magic and Lycita's disease, to absorb magic and life force, which created anti-magic. But magic, like all magic abilities, is associated only with the soul, not the body. That's why reincarnations also have their own magic. This is why Julius having no magic means he must be the reincarnation of someone without magic. Look at Patri and William, when their souls switch, so does their magic. Grimoires are tied to souls. When someone dies, their grimoire dissolves, indicating that magic always accompanies the soul. This is why Asta doesn't have anti-magic, he lacks a soul, which is also why Lucius couldn't use soul magic on Asta, not due to anti-magic. This is the same reason why he can't see Asta's future. Asta isn't a living entity, in the same sense other humans are. He's merely a body, and probably also because all timelines depend entirely on Asta's decision to possibly sacrifice himself. Both could likely be the reason. People say it's because of anti-magic, but that's not accurate. Lucius couldn't see Asta's future long before he acquired anti-magic. However, it seems he can't see Liebe's future either, suggesting the exact reason might be slightly different. But the idea is Liebe is Asta's soul and Asta is Liebe's body. That's why in their devil union, it's Asta's body that transforms, not Liebe's. That's why Liebe gives his magic, because he's the soul. This would explain why Asta can use a 5-leaf clover grimoire like a devil, when Nacht said that there's a mysterious connection between Asta and Liebe that lets him summon Liebe without a relic, and why Asta is physically as strong as a devil. And if you're afraid that Asta will die and disappear from the series, don't worry, because if Lucius can somehow be defeated without Julius losing his life, then it could be that because Asta sacrifices himself and thus makes Julius' existence possible, some kind of synchronization takes place that overrides Julius' existence in the present and makes him to Asta, maybe even returning his time magic. Then Asta is truly Astaroth. And so because of Asta's decision to place his friends above his own life, he would be granted a gift of fate. with which he can not only close the time loop and thus save the universe, but also escape the endless curse of resurrection. Please don't forget to like, this really helps me a lot. And if you want to see more Black Clover content, then subscribe to this channel with the notification bell activated. Thank you for watching and see you next time. Bye.